welcome to the Quarterback's Room. We're glad you're here for today's episode. A reminder, the Quarterback's Room is brought to you by Florida Football Prep. That's Florida Football Prep for all your football needs. Whether it's customized team gear or top-notch training through either the Jake Medlock Passing Academy or CDR Elite for speed and agility training. Also, they have the best customized and pre-prepared footballs on the market today. They do a lot of work for like the local high schools and top-notch athletes in the area. So that's really kind of how they got their start, doing preparation for footballs. When you first get them, you have to go through a whole preparation process to make them game ready. So they are the best in the business at doing that. So if you're a young quarterback or a team that needs to have your footballs prepared properly, reach out to Florida Football Prep. That's www.floridafootballprep.com. So we had the college football playoffs finished up last weekend.
Yeah.
Actually on Monday. Interesting game. So what did you think about it, Miles?
I mean, Notre Dame went down the field, scored, and then Ohio State did it, and then Notre Dame got, stuck in a hole.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting because when it first started out, I said, oh, this is going to be a game. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. And then Notre Dame just got stuffed in their second possession, and it just didn't get any better until the third quarter, and then going into the fourth quarter when they brought it within one score. But I think that after the first half, the outcome was never really in doubt because I think it was 21-7 going into halftime, and at that point. And I think Ohio State came down and scored right away in the second half.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, this thing is pretty much over. So my question is, there's a lot of people saying that Ohio State and Notre Dame did not belong in that game because, well, they didn't even win their conference championships. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, Notre Dame's an independent, though.
Yeah, but I think the argument a lot of these guys, especially the SEC folks, like to say is that, we had two teams that had the absolute worst losses of the season with Notre Dame losing to NIU, and then Michigan beating Ohio State. Michigan was a very mid team this year. But they beat Ohio State at Ohio State. So those are two embarrassing losses. Neither team, Ohio State didn't even make it to the conference championship, and they end up being national champions. Mm-hmm. Now, the SEC folks, I would point out to them that who did Alabama play in a bowl game?
Michigan.
Who won that game?
Michigan.
So if Michigan, they all wanted Alabama in the playoffs, remember?
Yeah.
So with Alabama losing to Michigan, the same team that beat Ohio State at Ohio State, I don't have any, I have absolutely no feelings to get them into that game. They did not belong in the playoffs. Now, other people that would talk about it, I go back to 2017, all right? Who got into the playoffs in 2017 that wasn't a conference champion? Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
Who ended up being national champions in 2017?
Clemson.
Mm-mm.
UCF.
No. Well, UCF was. So let me put this to bed. UCF was selected as a national champion by, I think it's the Coley Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. And that is one of the major selectors the NCAA uses to select national champions. It's like back in the day, you used to have split championships. I remember you'd have Penn State, and I think it was Penn State and Notre Dame or somebody else that won it back in the 80s. I think BYU was one of those that was picked as a national champion by USA Today versus the AP poll. Anyway, if you look at the NCAA championship records, it lists both Alabama, who did not win their conference in 2017, but was in the playoffs, okay, mm-hmm. Alabama and UCF as national champions. Just like I think they did it for somebody else, and it's always that way. So for all you people that think that that the college football playoffs, even as expanded as it is, and it's better now, is a NCAA recognized national championship. Did you realize that football is the only sport that the NCAA does not select the champion? Did you know that?
No.
So it is the only sport that the NCAA does not select the champion. It's always gone by the polls or a major selector. So when you look at 2017, for instance, both UCF and Alabama are recognized by the NCAA. And whether or not you recognize them individually, I don't care. But in the books, UCF and Alabama are both NCAA listed in the NCAA handbook as national champions for 2017. So another interesting thing, going back to it, those people saying, "Oh my God, how did Ohio State get in there and get a national?" They didn't even win their conference. And the same people saying that are the same Alabama fans.
Yeah.
That now, are they willing to give up their 2017 championship? I seriously doubt it. You think?
Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah. So I just don't know. But so going back, I think one of the interesting things that we ended up with is an interesting season with the college football playoffs, where teams that normally would not have even been in the mix ended up vying for the national championship. I can tell you that Notre Dame and Ohio State would have probably been the first two out. Maybe Notre Dame would have gotten in, but Ohio State would have probably been the first team out. Or they would have left out Penn State and put them in, put in Ohio State. So it'd be interesting to see how it would have broken down with the 4-team format. But I think 12 teams is better. I think there's a lot of improvement that can be done, and we'll go into that in a few minutes. But let's talk real quick. So Miles has put together his unbiased top 25.
Yeah.
And do you want to go through it real quick?
Sure.
All right. So for the first time ever, Miles' unbiased final top 25 of 24-25. All right, Miles, go ahead.
Number 1, Ohio State.
Obviously.
Number 2, Notre Dame.
Right.
3, Texas.
I can get in with that.
4, Penn State.
I'm okay with that. I think that a lot of people have them rated lower. Go ahead.
5, Georgia.
I think one of the interesting things about Georgia is that a lot of people didn't realize that while Georgia lost that game and they lost by double digits, that the interesting thing was that Kirby Smart's father was in the hospital. So I guarantee you he wasn't really thinking about the football game. And again, my condolences to the Smart family. They really, that had to be a really hard time for them, and nothing but the best. All right, Miles, continue.
6, Oregon.
Okay.
7, Arizona State.
Okay.
8, Boise State.
All right.
9, Tennessee.
Okay.
10, Indiana.
All right.
11, Clemson.
I'll take it.
12's SMU.
That seems kind of high when you go to it, that how badly they got kind of manhandled.
Yeah, but they still made the playoffs, which is fine with the men.
So an interesting thing. So who's your 13?
BYU.
So now, didn't BYU beat SMU in the regular season?
Yeah.
BYU ended up what? BYU was like 12-2, correct?
I think it was 11-2.
It was. Yeah, because they didn't play in the conference championship, and they played in the bowl game, and they manhandled Colorado pretty handily. So I think that's yeah. I would have probably had them above SMU, and if you want to talk about the team that got the biggest slight of the college football playoffs, that was BYU. All right, there's no reason BYU should not have been in that conversation, and I think that it's a big slight to them. But anyway, all right, so continue.
14, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, all right.
15, Illinois.
That's a big jump from, I think, the regular ratings have them, but okay.
16, Iowa State.
Okay.
17, Miami.
Okay.
18, Army.
Army, that now to me, I think in the AP poll, Army is still rated at
21st.
21. I think they've been stuck at 21 that's the highest they got, and they didn't get moved. This is a team that's 12-2. 12-2, and the highest they could get is 21 in the AP poll. And that to me is a travesty and should never have happened. All right, continue.
19 Syracuse.
All right.
20 Alabama.
Oh, the Alabama fans are going to be mad. Go ahead.
21 South Carolina.
All right.
22 Missouri.
Okay.
23 Memphis.
All right.
24 UNLV.
All right.
25 Colorado.
All right. I think that's a pretty solid list. And honestly, I think yours is better than the APs and the coaches poll, because this is the unbiased Miles top 25. So now, a couple things that we wanted to talk about is there were a lot of complaints about the CFP this year. A lot of it, quite frankly, was from fans of one conference or another saying that they should have had more teams in. But I think it would have been better ways to make it better. We came up with our top 5 ways to make the college football playoffs better this year. So, Miles, you want to start us off?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All playoff games up until the championship will be played in home stadiums.
You know, that's a big one. I think people that saw the games, the first round of the playoff games, kind of appreciated the atmosphere a lot more. It wasn't generic. I think that we should follow more of the NFL model, where the regular season counts. You get home field advantage. All right. And that is an advantage. Anybody you know it. So instead of trying to throw them into bowl games and making it fit that schedule, it's better to just be able to go to the home stadiums and knock this out. And again, follow the NFL model, where the NFL has you get home field advantage throughout the playoffs until the final game, the national championship game. All right. So, Miles, what do you got for number 2?
Playoffs start immediately after the championship weekend next week.
Yeah. So, what we're talking about is the playoffs should start. You have the championship weekend. The next week, the playoffs start. Boom. There's no big long break. There's no waiting for bowl games. It's boom. Every week, there's some playoff games go each round. I think that it just makes more sense. And you don't want the college football season going until the end of January. I mean, you're already into the next semester. It's crazy. Remember, even though these kids are probably all getting paid a lot more than I make, they are still technically student athletes. So they do have to go to classes. Pushing this stuff deep into the first semester or the second semester is kind of ridiculous. So let's get these games done. Let's get the playoffs over by the first or second, no later, early in the second week of January. I think that going longer than that is just ridiculous. All right. So what do you think, Miles? The next one?
Eliminate the committee.
Now, that's been a bane in many people's side. The committee is just biased. Let's just be honest. They're going out there, they're using, it's called having, there's objective data and there's subjective data. You need to have objective data when picking these teams. It needs to be looked at all the data individually and take out conference bias, take out team bias and history bias. All that needs to get thrown out, because that's what's in the committee. It's built into the cake. So it is literally baked into the cake. So you don't want any of that in the NFL playoffs. The college football playoffs. It doesn't exist in the NFL playoffs. Why? Because there are set teams based on records, based on where you stand in your division, that get into the playoffs. There is no bias. There is no committee in the NFL playoffs. And you never hear anybody complain about where people are seated in the playoffs. It just doesn't make any sense to go down that route with college football, because until you get rid of that committee, you're going to have that same problem over and over again. All right. Next one.
Expand the playoffs to 16 teams with no bye weeks.
So I think this is one of the smarter ways to go. Right now, if you were to ask the people that played in the playoffs this year, Miles, how did the teams that how did the teams that got the bye week, how did they fare?
They all lost.
They all lost. Every last one of them. There's something to be said about staying in a rhythm, getting in a flow, having no bye weeks. I think you expand it to 16 teams, no bye weeks, and that'll lead us to our last and final one. And I'll talk about this one. So all conference champions, all. I don't mean the P4 / or whatever. I mean all FBS. There's 9 of them right now. And if the Pac-12 ever gets their stuff together, there'll be 10 again. But until that happens, there should be at least 9 automatic bids. I think the 9 conference champions should get automatic bids. Nobody gets left out because they're lesser or greater than some other conference. And yeah, there's going to be some mismatches. We got that. But you got to make football matter. You got to make conference championships matter. You have to make the season matter. Because if you don't do that, then what's even the point? You've got teams now saying, why even play conference championship games? Because if you do, you're just getting beat up. Or if you lose, you may be out. Well, to me, if you have automatic buys or automatic bids for all conference champions, what do you think, Miles? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah.
So, and on top of that, then you can pick out those 6 or 7 until the big Pac-12 gets their act together. Those will be considered wild cards, and they could be seeded by an AI generated computer model similar to the old BCS system, and you take the top 7 non-conference champion teams, and they get playoff bids. All right, and it's not based on some guy sitting in a dark room in the committee sitting there going, "Oh, I like the SEC or I like the Big Ten. We need more Big Ten teams." Because let's be honest, a lot of the SEC stuff push comes from ESPN. And I've talked about this at length multiple times. ESPN owns the SEC, all the television rights to the SEC. ESPN also owns all the television rights to the college football playoffs. So it is a financial issue for them when it comes to the college football playoffs and who gets in and how much money they make and how much they improve their brand. So whether or not, Miles, if the SEC only gets 2 teams in the college football playoffs, who do you think's matter, ESPN or the SEC?
Both.
Both, but it's all about money. It's all about money and prestige. So I've talked about this before. I spent 27 years in the Army. One of the jobs I did was called information operations, and it essentially is a way to form a narrative, use a combination of media, of psychological operations, a whole messaging, all this stuff to push a narrative. If you look at ESPN, that's what they do. They push a narrative that the SEC is the best conference. And guess what? It works. They've influenced the AP voters, obviously, because where do they get their sports news? Where do most writers get their sports news?
ESPN.
Okay. So they push that narrative and it gets out there, and they push it for teams that that either they have the rights to through the SEC or things that'll push their bottom line. Question, Miles.
Mm-hmm.
Which conference did ESPN sell off or give up a lot of their rights to?
The Big 12.
So just a note, when ESPN talks smack about the Big 12, just remember they got rid of a lot of their media rights to that. So there's a reason that they talk down about the Big 12. ESPN is talking down about the Big 12 because they had to give up part of their media rights to that conference. So it's, again, follow the money. All right. Shifting gears. And something we haven't talked a lot about here is the NFL. So we're heading to the NFL playoffs, the final 2 games, right?
Yeah.
Championship weekend. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got? You got who? Commanders versus
Eagles,
who you got?
Commanders.
Why Commanders?
Jaden Daniels it's just gonna rip their defense apart.
I think that Jaden Daniels has been the biggest surprise in the NFL this year. What do you think?
Yeah,
So why do you think that is?
it's just it takes a long time for most players to get like better in the NFL. Like most people don't just go in and just have a stellar year. It's rare for that.
Well, one of the interesting things about Jaden Daniels is, hey, did you know he uses VR?
Yeah, I did.
So one of the interesting things that Miles has is a system called reps. And I'm going to try to get the person that built that program onto the show, but to talk about how it's a repetition of basically reading the field, and it makes you better at split-second decisions. And I've said time and again, as a quarterback, probably the thing that separates great quarterbacks from good quarterbacks is the ability to process information quickly. If you can process information quickly, then you'll make the right decisions on the field. You know what else Jaden Daniels has?
Well,
Do you know who his agent is?
no,
Jaden Daniels' agent is his mom.
it is.
His mom. And guess what she says all the time?
What?
Keep them girls away from my son. Because she is convinced there are some girls out there trying to get their hooks into Jaden Daniels. Because, hello, NFL football quarterback, making a lot of money. Oh, yeah. But he's got his mom that's very, very protective. And that's, to me, a great thing. Keeps him focused, keeps him centered, and my hat's off to her. And for me, a good mother. And for Jaden, for being focused. And one of the things I talk a lot about is when I talk about you to people, what do I always say? Do you know?
Really focused.
So, yeah, you're focused. You've always been focused. Your ability to focus on certain things and just stay focused. Ever since you've been a young age, to me, that separated you from other players, even when you were like 6, 7 years old. You focused. You were focused on being a quarterback and focused on playing your best football. I still remember a story about Miles. A couple years ago at school, they get this thing that they get their like star pupil day or something like that, where I think it was for your birthday. Was it for your birthday? Was it like a birthday thing?
I don't know.
Do you remember this when your mom said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
No.
Do you remember what you said?
No.
Miles said he wanted to be an NFL quarterback, and this is like 2 or 3 years ago. And his mom said, "Yeah, okay, but really, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Do you know what you said?
No.
An NFL quarterback. She said, "Well, what if that doesn't work out for you?" You know, your answer was,
No.
"Well, it's NFL quarterback or nothing." So ever since then, I have done everything I can to get you what you need, so that someday you can be an NFL quarterback if you put in the work, because it's not easy. Ask Tom Brady. Ask Jaden Daniels. I'll tell you, it's not easy. All right, so we talked about the Commanders and the Eagles. What's the other game?
Chiefs and Bills.
Ooh, that's like grudge match after grudge match after grudge match. I think that you're facing the two, probably what I consider the two best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people have given the Chiefs grief this year. You know that? Why? You think that they think that the refs do calls for them. What do you think?
Yeah, sometimes.
You think the refs kind of slanted a little
Yeah.
bit towards the Chiefs? Why?
It's like every play, it's like a flag on someone. It's always like a flag on the opponent or something. It's almost every play.
Yeah.
And back in Chiefs versus Eagles Super Bowl, there was like a horrible call for pass interference where the guy was he touched him he tapped him and they called pass interference, which gave the Chiefs field goal range and they won.
Yeah, but I'll be honest. If you're going to be an honest referee, an official, and you go out there on every play, you can find a penalty. There's holding, there's something going on every single play. So I don't know. We'll see. I like Josh Allen. I wish I've been a Bills fan in the past, but kind of. So I have never been a solid, this is my team guy in the NFL. And I usually just follow players I either know or really like coming out of college that played for my team. And like, for instance, I was a big fan of the Bills. Why was I a fan of the Bills, Miles?
Gabe Davis.
Gabriel Davis was on that team, as well as
who else?
Latavius Murray, maybe?
Oh,
remember
right.
Tay was over there. So when Latavius Murray and Gabe Davis were playing there, I was a fan of the Bills because, and before that, we were fans of the Rams. Remember the Rams?
Yeah.
Why were we fans of the Rams?
Otis.
For Otis Anderson, who is a close friend of ours whose life was tragically cut short. We may have to do a special on that sometime to talk about O. But it's never been one team. Now, I recently did something online and said, okay, who's going to be my team? So I have decided my team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And a couple reasons for that. A, they're only a few miles away.
Yeah.
Well, not a few miles, but they're within driving range if I ever want to go to a game. And B, I really like Baker Mayfield. I think that's a fantastic story, what he's done, his comeback and his ability to be become a franchise quarterback after being kicked around the league and after being completely misused in Cleveland. My hat's off to Baker Mayfield. I think he's a great person, and I think he's a great player, and I think he goes out and has fun. And guess what? Football is a game, so it's supposed to be fun. All right. So who's your pick? Bills versus Chiefs.
Chiefs.
You think the Chiefs are going to win it, or are the refs going to win it for the Chiefs?
Refs.
You think it's going to be close and they're going to throw it a game?
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly think that the best team will win. And I hate to say it, but I think it's still the Chiefs. With that being said, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But so you start today. You have your first sevens tournament.
Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things that I found out this week is that our team of 11-year-olds is going to be playing as a 12U team. So we will literally have a team of a year younger than the other team going in each one of our tournaments. So the entire team is essentially playing up. If you don't know what that means that you're playing at a more advanced level than you're supposed to be. What do you think?
I mean, my mindset is just think everyone's Toho.
And who is Toho?
It's a team we beat 41-0.
Okay, and that was in Pop Warner.
Yeah.
That was the game where you threw for like 100 yards and rushed for like 100 yards, and they took you out halfway through the third quarter because you were winning so bad. Yeah. And that was in Pop Warner, guys. So one of the big jokes where we went to the UCF football game that night, and your stats were better than the starting quarterback stats of UCF, which I thought was kind of funny. You threw for more yards and at least through three quarters, and you rushed for more yards than they did, which I thought was kind of funny. But that being said, so your first tournament's today, and I think it'll be a fun time, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it warms up a little bit, because guys, we're in Florida. It was 36 degrees, I think, when I got up this morning. So, and that's Central Florida. I feel for all the tourists that are here going to go to Disney World and stuff. Yikes. but enjoy it. It's still sunny and beautiful out, but it's supposed to be around 60 degrees by the time the game starts. So any final words before we wrap the show up?
No.
You never do. Miles Morning, the man of few words. With that, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Join us next week. I know I promised the football preparation, and I'm working on that. Unfortunately, the weather has been very uncooperative, and it's quite frankly been very cold outside, and some of what I do is outside. So we'll get that done. Hopefully this week the weather's supposed to be good. So try to knock that out. So to show you how to do a better preparation of your footballs, or again, you can just send them into Florida Football Prep or buy an already prep ball that we have done. They're all available online. Go to www.floridafootballprep.com. And until next time, thanks for joining us in the quarterback's room.